Welcome to Truly Terrified, Paranormal versus Physics, where we talk about some really weird stuff, and Joe the scientist explains how it's not possible, or maybe it is. I'm Lynn, and
I'm Joe.
Rook Stone is back with us today. When she was on the podcast a couple of episodes ago, she mentioned the Hat Man, and I had so many questions. Welcome back, Rook.
Thank you for having me again, though it's also probably because I am your middle child.
Well, that's true. You have no choice. I've deliberately not looked up anything about the Hat Man mainly because it scares me. However, I also wanted to be surprised by what you have to tell us. I've fortified myself with a cup of hot chocolate, so I hope I'm prepared to hear all about it.
Well, that's good because you are going to hear all about it. This episode is going to be split into two, correct?
Yes, it is.
All right, so the first half, we'll be looking into some explanations and ideas about the Hat Man. And then for the second half, we're going to focus on the influence of social media and memes on the Hat Man today.
Okay.
All right, so you haven't looked up anything about the Hat Man, have you, Joe?
No.
The only thing I know is what you said in that episode.
Fantastic. Can you tell me what you remember, what your impressions were of the Hat Man from the last episode that we did?
I was picturing like some kind of, like a top hat wearing like gentleman from like Britain, like 100 years ago kind of thing. And it was him standing in the window watching the person who potentially was sleep paralysis dreaming about it.
All right.
Okay, my perception or my memory or what I filled in my brain is that he's tall and thin and he's wearing a black suit like an undertaker and he's got a very thin, gaunt face and dark, sunken eyes.
I love that both of you came away with something different,
Mhm.
but following the same archetype.
Yeah.
All right. Are you ready for a plot twist?
Yeah.
So Carrie Drew, the artist whose story of the Hat Man I told last time, doesn't suffer sleep paralysis. They experience sleepwalking. They were able to move during their experience. They sat up in bed. The Hat Man is typically associated with sleep paralysis, particularly if you talk to sleep researchers, but has been seen by a lot of people who are not currently experiencing sleep paralysis.
Ooh, I'm a sleepwalker. That's terrifying.
It's interesting if you have supposing it is a dream, you have a persistent hallucination that tracks as you move around. Again, assuming it's a dream.
Right. Also an update, because I spoke to them. They said they did get a second opinion looking under the window. That was something that the two of you had discussed.
Oh, yeah.
So their roommate looked. There were no signs of anything there. Despite this, the roommate did continue to maintain that they saw a person, that it was not anything supernatural. It was not anything whatsoever. It was just somehow a person got up 12 feet in the air and peeked in the window without leaving any sign of climbing or a ladder. Obviously, Carrie disagrees with that.
Carrie disagrees with it because they think it was something supernatural?
Correct.
Okay.
They do not believe that it was a person.
Is what they saw consistent with like a bird or some other, like a cat maybe?
Well, I suppose you could put a hat on a cat.
It's a cat.
There is a famous book about that.
Well, like I'm thinking, because owls sometimes look very strange when they...
Like it just went in front of the window and hovered there for a moment?
Or sat on the...
Oh, sat on the windowsill.
Possible. Is there a plague of owls bothering everyone who sees the Hat Man?
Well, you clearly believe in the Hat Man.
Do I?
I don't know.
All right. So the Hat Man is considered to be one of the shadow people. Are either of you familiar with shadow people?
No.
They're people that are like shadows.
Basically, yeah. You see a dark figure quite often out of the corner of your eye. Something, it's indistinct. It's like the shape of a person, but it's not.
Glenn in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
All right. So
here.
Fantastic. So some theorize that they are ghosts who haven't yet accepted their death, and so they're manifesting differently than other dead figures. Would you like to tell me about your sighting of Glenn?
Well, I don't even remember what time of night it was, whether it was like I woke up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom or what. But as I walked by the doorway into the kitchen, it was just like in a cartoon where their head whips back, and doing a double take. And there was a thin, short man, kind of bent over. I think he had suspenders on. I can't really remember, but he was.
Was he wearing a hat?
No, but he is kind of leaning on the kitchen counter. And so the next day I asked Christina, because she had actually met Glenn. I had never met him. I'd heard him. You know that old TV show, I think it's called Tool Time, where there was a neighbor that lived next door and he would just talk through the fence and nobody ever saw him? You remember that show?
I remember it.
Okay.
I think it was before Joe's time.
Yeah, probably. So that was how I knew Glenn, because he was just on the other side of the fence and I would hear him speaking, but I never saw him. So I asked Christina and she said he was short. I don't know if she said, I can't even remember. I was traumatized. It was so shocking. It was so absolutely shocking. Now I see other things here, but that was so distinct and so clear. And when I whipped my head back, he was gone.
That is unsettling.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Especially since he pounds on the walls and
he pounds on the walls and
drops glass on the floor.
His father is buried in the yard, and it's just par for the course. But
did Glenn die in the house?
No, he died in a hospital.
In a hospital, yeah.
But his mother and his grandmother probably died here.
Well, maybe it's his father. I mean, he's ostensibly buried in the yard.
Yeah, his father is buried in the yard. Yeah, we'll have to talk about that another time.
Yeah, the distinction between where ghosts go, whether it's near their body, where they died, or where was important to them in life, is an interesting one in folklore.
Yeah, and it's a lot of variation.
Yeah. So for another idea about the shadow people, again, of which the Hat Man is generally considered to be one, it's that they are demonic beings, that they are here for something evil. The reason that people are so unsettled by them is that you are picking up on a subconscious level that this is here to harm you.
Right.
Yeah. On the more science fiction-y side, some think that they're aliens in disguise, and that some people are able to see through that disguise, that the aliens are just lurking around you all the time, but you can't always see them.
Like insufficient cloaking mechanism.
Right, like their cloaking is glitching, and so you see them as a shadow. There's also the theory that they are interdimensional beings just passing briefly into our vision, that you are seeing something, across dimensions and you're not seeing it well. There's some kind of interference, etc. And so you see just a shadowy figure just for a moment, just on the edge of your vision, or just as you're falling asleep or waking up from a nightmare.
Yeah, that's interesting too, especially because we've talked about the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's true, then there's conceivably mechanisms you could actually get information from alternate histories. And you would expect it in certain situations, like when you're falling asleep, where you are not like updating your model of reality immediately all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But not necessarily that's how it works, but that's interesting.
Well, you know, my interpretation of how things work is that and Joey always can tell me how wrong I am.
I never say how wrong you are. I just say I need more information.
Well, I think that it's like radio waves, and sometimes you're able to tune the dial in and you pick up by radio waves. I mean, literally like the radio. And sometimes you tune in the dial and you pick up a station, and then it's very brief, and then you lose it again. And so if the Hat Man is something from another realm, that's what I would guess it is. The thing in my kitchen I figured that's what it was. Whether it was a many worlds thing and I dialed in the right channel, or it's a ghost or whatever. So that's all I got to say about that. Joey's, you can't see Joey. He's laughing at me, probably.
I'm not laughing at you.
Okay.
There is a neurological explanation for the shadow person put forward a couple years ago. Okay, God, I'm going to mispronounce this, but there's a specific region of the brain called the left temporoparietal junction, or the TPJ.
I think you got it right.
Maybe. That if it is stimulated, it can create the illusion of a shadow person. It's actually really interesting how they discovered this, because this was not an experiment trying to find shadow people. Why would you start stimulating random parts of the brain for that? What they were doing is, for some people who have epilepsy, there are specific stimulations you can do to the brain that can help control their seizures or help you find where the source is for either treatment or just to narrow down what form of epilepsy it is.
Okay.
So a 23-year-old woman in Switzerland was having this done. So they applied a mild current through surgically implanted electrodes to various regions of her brain. Not much happened until they stimulated her left temporoparietal junction. Oh, man, that is difficult to say. It's located roughly above the left ear. And as soon as they did that...
It's only on the left side?
Well, they didn't have it. There's a right one as well. They didn't have it didn't happen on the right.
Okay.
Only on the left. And, there's different hemispheres of your brain are associated with different sensations, different processes, verbal speech versus emotional expression, things like that.
Right.
So they stimulated this spot just above the left ear, and suddenly she reported the feeling of a presence of someone behind her. A motionless and speechless shadow that imitated her body posture and actions.
My God. Jeez.
She described that he lay beneath her, shadowing her when she lay down, and that when she was sitting, he was sitting behind her, and that when she reached for something to participate in a language exercise, that he attempted to take the card from her.
That's interesting. It makes me think maybe it's actually part of her brain that handles her own spatial awareness of her own body, but it's being seen by the rest of the brain as a foreign body.
That is the theory, that you are experiencing yourself, but you are not experiencing yourself as where you actually are, and you are not viewing it as you. So they think it might be related to schizophrenia and some various other psychoses where you hear your inner monologue in your head and you view that as someone else, where you are doing something, but you are viewing it as someone else is doing the thing.
Okay, I have no doubt that exists and that experiment or study was valid, but I think that for the vast majority, well, no, I can't even speak on that, because in my own experience, when I think I see somebody or something out of the corner of my eye, it is definitely not me. And the thing I saw in my kitchen, there is no way, no how that I could have said, oh, that's what I look like, because it was a little old man.
Well, you have to consider them like that. In that case, it could be caused by something else, but at least a subset of cases would be caused by this.
Okay.
Right. And it's also possible that we will find another part of the brain that's associated not with our sense of where we are, but where other people are.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. So you could have had a sense like somebody you were thinking of was there, and it was just kind of a malfunction.
Mm-hmm.
However, what that does not explain is why the hat.
Yeah.
So quite often what people see is, a shadowy figure, face indistinct, with a hat that has a brim on it, and he has either a cape or some kind of flowing large cloak, or a coat, excuse me. But the shape of the hat differs a bit. So some people see a fedora, some see like a top hat, like you described, Joe. Some have even described it like a pointy hat, like a wizard's hat. Yeah.
Is it always distort? Does it always distort their profile? Like they can always see that it's like there's a brim, or it's elongating their head, or
the brim is usually I haven't seen anywhere someone says they didn't see a brim, that it wasn't like they didn't see just like the shape of a huge head,
or like a stocking cap or something.
Right. They see the brim, it's distinct so that you can see the line between head and hat.
That's interesting.
I think that's important. If there isn't a brim there and you're seeing someone shadowy, you're not necessarily going to be able to tell that that's a hat. It's going to look like a misshapen head. But if there's a brim, it's a hat.
Yeah, it makes me think of old artwork from early Christian early Christian, like saints and holy figures. They put this round thing in the background of their head, apparently changing the shape of their head. And so I wonder, and people also talk about auras. We should do auras too.
That would be a good one.
Which is, I mean, it's probably an optical thing, something going, it's something how your brain is processing
without
vision.
Having to get into it right now. That is not what an aura is.
a like an outline that changes colors.
You can see it around the outline of the body, but that is not what it is not.
Oh, I see what you're saying. But along those same lines of something that is around the profile or the visual contour of a person.
So how prevalent is seeing the Hat Man?
I'm not sure. It appears to have become more prevalent recently, which is something that I'll get into in the second half.
Okay.
I wanted to end with a little bit of a tidbit that I got from a mini documentary put out by Quartz on YouTube about the Hat Man. They interviewed a psychologist that he suggested that there was a link between the Hat Man and Freddy Krueger. There's a figure in dreams, wears a fedora, very scary, can come at you if you fall asleep for even a moment and you can't get away. The problem with that is that we appear to have stories that predate Freddy Krueger, so it may be more likely that Freddy Krueger is based on the Hat Man than the Hat Man is based on Freddy Krueger.
Right, gotcha.
But he had some advice. If you are being bothered by the Hat Man, he says that what you should do is focus on memories of the Hat Man during the day. Think about the Hat Man. Think about what you experienced.
This is not a good idea. This is a terrible idea.
Think about it real hard, really in depth, and then try to associate positive feelings with him.
Okay, so listen, if the Hat Man is some paranormal thing and you're spending all day like thinking about him, don't you think he's going to come back because he knows you like him? Just seems bad.
Just picture the Hat Man bringing you flowers. Oh, isn't he such a nice guy? Just, the sun is high in the sky, so it's safe to think about the Hat Man right now. Just think about him. He's a big shadow. You can't see his face clearly, but you can see a great big smile in there.
That is too
just
freaking
wide
creepy.
as can be.
Yeah.
You would have to not understand human emotions to think that was good advice.
I would say, as someone who is neurodivergent, that most neurodivergent people would be more abhorred by that than the neurotypical.
The Hat Man around a lot. People are seeing him. He seems to be showing up more. There's possibly a link between a place in your brain. Maybe not. Maybe so.
And maybe he's your friend.
And if you imagine him grinning at you, he will come in the night and comfort you in your sleep. Oh my
goodness. I think that sounds great.
thank you, Rook, for hanging out with us today. I think the second half of this episode will be up on Saturday. Thank you, listeners, for coming along for the ride. Our contact information is in the show notes. And as always, if you have a story you want to tell, send it to us. Please share, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and never be so terrified you can't run.